Hey there, folks. Are you passionate about democracy and concerned about the rise of authoritarianism? I'm Joanne, Kevin's wife, and I've seen him give everything to this work. That's why Coffee with Democrats matters, lifting up stories, building connections, and keeping democracy strong. So tune in every Tuesday at 7 p.m. for 30 minutes of conversation with elected officials, candidates, and Democratic influencers, only on Coffee with Democrats. So join me in welcoming the Executive Director and host of Coffee with Democrats, my husband, Kevin Dawson.
Hey, and good morning or good evening. It's great to be here with a good friend and the leader of the Senate caucus, the Democrat Senators, Julia Kirt. Julia, good evening and welcome to Coffee with Democrats.
Good evening. Glad to be here. I kind of wish I'd picked up some coffee on my way, but you know, I've been the mom taxi this evening. So
that's a wonderful thing, and knowing all the things that you're having to do, running with. I mean, you're constantly on the go. I don't know how you do it. I don't have your energy. I wish I did, but you are a full-time mom plus a full-time legislator, a full-time wife. I mean, the jobs never end for you.
yeah, I've been thinking a lot about this because next year's my last reelection because of term limits, and I kind of think I would not be able to do this pace that I do if I didn't have that timeline in mind, because I know there's an end to it. And so I just feel like it's my responsibility to do everything I can while I'm in this office. As long as I'm holding this seat, I better be doing what I can to build it and make it better.
All right. For those people who are tuning in, I want everybody to be patient with us on this. The only way that Senator Kirt is able to join us is by remote, and that connection is going to be a little bit spotty from time to time. So if you see her freezing up, don't sweat it. We're going to keep right on moving on, and you'll be able to hear her.
So sorry. Is it lagging?
Don't apologize, because with your schedule, this is exactly the kind of thing that we need to expect. I'm more than happy to put up with it, and I think everybody that's listening will be more than happy to keep listening as well. So
great.
Thank you so much for coming on Coffee with Democrats. We've got some things to talk about. I was just scrolling as I was waiting for you to come on. I was just scrolling. It looks like Spanberger is now going to be the governor of Virginia. And then the lieutenant governor, they're flipping that, both the governor and lieutenant governor from Republican to Democrat in Virginia.
Wow, that's exciting.
That is amazing to me.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
I met Representative Spanberger in Chicago during the convention, and she is a wonderful, wonderful person, and I'm so happy for her and for the people of Virginia too. I'm thrilled.
That makes a big difference. One thing I know about Virginia, they have been working to build infrastructure there for a long time, and I talked with them because of course they finally flipped one. I think they flipped the House first. Anyway, point is, they were close for a while, but that's a historically Republican state, and the kinds of things they did are the kinds of things we're trying to build here. It's that organizing, collaboration, the House and Senate Democrats working together, any statewide races, like making sure we actually are building something that lasts instead of just building one campaign at a time. And I've had a great time talking with the legislators from there, and I've learned a lot.
Well, it is wonderful, and I know that there's some cross-functional ability for you to cross-function with people from other states, and it is a wonderful thing to be able to learn from states that have been in our situation prior, and they're working their way out of it. So that brings us hope that we can actually do the same thing. So we've got to come back home here and start talking about what's going on in Oklahoma. We're dealing with a shutdown and the crisis that's going to happen with the homeless and the people that are on SNAP benefits and WIC, things like that. And you've been working hard. I hear you working so hard on trying to free up some money to help these people. I want to give you an opportunity to talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, we just have to be real that people are struggling, and there's a lot of hard decisions being made. I've talked to federal employees who are going without pay, or they're on furlough. Now we're starting to furlough Oklahoma State employees, which I'm very concerned. Feel like we should not be doing that because we're just adding to the problem. And we can talk about that. And then we've got, of course, the cutoff of SNAP benefits. That was on top of other Trump-induced cuts that have really hit folks hard. 684,000 folks on SNAP last month. So that many people have been expecting some food assistance, everything from people who get $20 a month up to people who feed a family of 5 or 6 kids. And I think we dealt with a lot of misunderstanding about who's on SNAP and why they need that help. And so much of it is about our folks not getting paid real wages or good wages, or people being able to having to be out of the workforce because they have a disability or they're caring for someone, whether an aging person or a kid. And we're just not very realistic about our workforce participation and what those barriers are that policy could fix if we just took the time to do so.
And that comes to knowing that I know you're reaching across the aisle, and so are the representatives on the House side reaching across the aisle and just trying everything we can to pull them along and pull them out of the place where they want to be. But the cruelty has got to stop, and you deal with it so much. And I say this all the time, that I am more proud of the Democrats working in Oklahoma, because you guys have to work twice, maybe 4 times as hard as anybody else in the nation just to get things done. And it just makes me proud to have people like yourself doing that hard work day in and day out, and on the behalf of all Oklahomans.
Well, thank you, Kevin. I mean, I think when you look at the Senate, we're 8 of 48, and in the House, it's 20 of 101. And, when you have numbers like that, everything you do is going to be bipartisan. Everything you do is going to be hard fought. And we constantly are making decisions when we're calling out our colleagues, when we're holding them accountable, when we're trying to work with them and hope that we can get something done, and constantly having to pull every lever we can to try to get our state doing the right thing. And when it comes to SNAP, part of that has been breaking up some of the myths about why folks need that help. Right.
Yeah. And there's a lot of misinformation too that's being spread about it as well. And we can go into that, but that's another rabbit hole we can leave for another time.
It's true.
So let's talk about one thing that I think is really important for people to know about. Hey, look, you got to run for re-election again, and you're running on a lot of a really good platform. So let's talk about your re-election. I'm going to pull up onto the screen your actual page so people can see how to get to your page. But
nice.
I'm going to turn it back over to you to let you talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. Time flies, because I first got elected in 2018 and started running about a year and a half before then. So it feels like yesterday, and it also feels like a long time ago. I'm up for my 3rd re-election. Of course, in the Senate, we each serve 4-year terms. And one of the challenging things is 6 of our 8 caucus members are all up next year. So we're going to have to work really hard to keep our caucus strong. 6 of us are on the governor's election cycle, and 2 are on the presidential cycle right now until we gain some more seats. So, I want to make sure my campaign's as strong as possible. Kevin, if you'll go back to that family picture just for a second, because one of the most interesting things about running is, the way your family has to participate. So that's my daughter, Lila, my son, Roger. They're 14 and 18 now, and they were 5 and 8 when I first decided to run. So I very much have watched them. They've grown up with all this, and, they continue to be a real inspiration. And my husband, Nathan, is such a huge support for me. He's from the beginning just had my back, and it's such an amazing thing, because they really have to sacrifice a lot of time and attention, because when we're dealing with something like hungry Oklahomans, it's very hard to turn that off. So I just want to give extra appreciation for my family and for all the families who, including like my mother-in-law and my mom, who help out, because it takes a village to really run for office and be in office and serve. So we're all trying to make sure that those of us who are up next year have really strong, we need, resources in place, good campaigns ready to go, because filing will happen during the legislative session. So it happens in April. And so if we're not ready, it's going to catch up to us, because we'll be knee deep in bills. And I, over time, have really found lanes where I can be effective. And definitely I'm one of the budget nerds of the Capitol and spend a lot of time trying to hold every dime accountable. I've worked very hard on mental health, and clearly we're in a real mental health crisis right now with Governor Stitt keeping flat budgets for years and then now cutting we're seeing it. We're seeing it in the crisis people are in. But I've found a lot of bipartisan success trying to improve our mental health systems. And then housing, I kept trying to run away from housing, but it's just the interconnection of so many issues. People are getting priced out of their homes. They can't rent. Our eviction rates are so far out of range from other states like ours. So those are the issues I've been working really hard on. I have always worked hard on ethics, our ethics rules and our election rules, because I feel like that's kind of the basis of how we do everything we do. Is if every decision made in that Capitol is not transparent, or there's some kind of interest behind it that we don't know about, that's not fair to the people of Oklahoma. So those are the kinds of things I've been working hard on.
Well, I got something to show you real quick. This is a lady here in Norman. She wanted to express her thanks to you for having this conversation and speaking from the front line. And it's good to hear that.
Thanks, Samantha.
I wanted to share that with you, that just popped up onto the comments, and I put
That's awesome.
Bottom.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, if you have more comments that you want to make, by all means, jump on here and do that. Because if there is a question that comes up that is pertinent, I will put that on the screen for Senator Kirt.
That's great.
So there is a lot to talk about. There's a lot to unfold in what you were talking about, the housing crisis. I wanted to step back just a little bit, and we're going to get into the housing crisis, but I wanted to step back. You have a background from the 1990s clear through when you got elected in 2018 as running nonprofits. So, in participating in nonprofits. And to me, when you started talking about the budget, it makes sense, because every dime you get as a nonprofit, you have to scrape and crawl
Absolutely.
and grab, whatever you can to keep everything functioning and running. And you're putting that practice into place as a leader within the Oklahoma Senate.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, that really is what came through my freshman term. Was I had looked at spreadsheets for years. I ran a group called the Oklahoma Visual Arts Coalition that helped artists across the state with funding and with business skills. And then I ran Oklahomans for the Arts, which is the arts advocacy organization. Even though they're small dollar amounts, when you can look at spreadsheets and you're not afraid to ask questions, that really serves you well in the legislature. And from the very beginning, that's what I did, was trying to understand the budget. I know it's our only constitutional duty, and everything comes back to the budget when it comes to priorities. And what I found up there is, because there's not a lot of transparency during the process, you have to have a knowledge base from learning outside the session, like during the interim and the previous years. Learning about the agencies, learning about the budget history is part of how I'm able to call out important questions, to look at those priorities again and again. And definitely it comes from my nonprofit life, for sure.
Right. And that when I invited you on here, that was one of the things I wanted to talk about, was your leadership skill that you brought to the job and that you're putting into practice. And so thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
So let's get into housing just a little bit. That's one of the topics that hits us here in Oklahoma pretty hard. We've got a lot of predatory buyers now that are buying up residential homes that are corporate buyers. And it's making it more and more difficult for people who might not have the means, the ready means available to be able to buy a home. And we're seeing some homeless people as a result of houses being not affordable. And I know that's in kind of one of the lanes that you like to talk about. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to.
I mean, housing and the housing market is so complex, and it comes with a deep history in America of how we've set up and allowed this market to be what it is. Sometimes people think that the government shouldn't be involved with housing, but I'll just say that we as a state are absolutely involved with housing, even when we choose not to be, because we do a lot to preempt cities when it comes to land use. We fundamentally, as a state, make the laws about what's a contract that can be enforceable. And so when you look at Oklahoma state law, if we think someone's being taken advantage of, we have laws to protect consumers. And that's part of what our state government's responsible for. So our whole court system, our whole legal system backs up our housing market as it is. So when it comes to things like eviction or the Landlord-Tenant Act, we absolutely have a role to play. And we have to make sure those are fair and that they're serving society. Because one of the challenges I see is when it comes to evictions, with your utilities could not be cut off if it's 105 degrees out or if it's -10, but you could be evicted in the course of about 5 days. And so we need to look at those laws and make sure they're fair. It's not a utility. We really have let private markets lead in housing. And what that means is we do have to have some consumer protection there. And when it comes to housing, we as a state have not taken a leadership role. We really just relied on being a low cost of living state. And so we only did the bare minimum, what the federal government sent us through the Housing and Urban Development HUD money. We only recently put some money in as a state. Before that, very, very little amounts through tax credits. So what I'll say is we're late to the game, but we also have a lot of opportunities because space is not as much of an issue. We have the territory. We just have to figure out how to find some more reasonable policies and help cities facilitate housing on a local level too. So I've been working on the supply side, the eviction side, working on, who else could be developers, who else can find the money. And there's also discussion around codes and zoning that I'm not working on, but some of my colleagues are.
And that's an important thing because you are the chair of the Democratic Senate caucus, and you're not by yourself. You have an entire team up there that every time I spend time with you, you've got somebody that is also a fellow senator with you or a representative because you're constantly trying to hold each other up and pull each other along. And it just has that encouraging, to me, I always see encouragement coming out of out of yourself and what's happening in the Senate. And which brings me back to leadership. You have got to, again, you're running for reelection, and I'll talk more about that in a little bit, but the leadership skills necessary in order to pull Oklahoma together, reach across the aisle as much as you can, try to, build those franchise networks as you can to try to get things accomplished, because that's your bottom line is you're up there not to be there for yourself, but to try to do things for the people. And that is constantly a hard work. So let's talk, let me run it by you to talk about some of your leadership skills and some of the leadership challenges as well as opportunities that will make people feel good.
Yeah, I would say it's just my honor and pleasure to get to be the leader of the Senate Democrats. So, 8 mighty members, and I'll tell you, they just punch way above their weight. They're some of the most hardworking, insightful, compassionate, driven people I've met from various parts of the state. And there's not a weak link. We don't have people who just happen to get in. That's one thing about being a supermajority. If you're a Democrat in office, you have worked hard to get there and you have connected with community, or else you wouldn't be there. And so what I find is we are all working our tails off. And it's the biggest challenge is for us to get connected and make sure we're backing each other up. Because in that building, it's not been the history for it to be collaborative. It's developed to be a two-party system in that building. So the majority writes the rules, sets the agenda, and the minorities usually just along for the ride. And so it's very challenging. The thing we work really hard on is how to be proactive. And I think coming out of small nonprofits, I was in the creative sector working with artists, we were underdogs. And I think I'm used to that, where I don't expect anyone to automatically respect us or assume that we have something to add. And so that's part of what we have to bring is how do we work together and become stronger than ourselves independently? And how do we back each other well? And so that's meant all kinds of leverage with our colleagues, from just our personal relationships to making sure we know every advocacy organization that we can share information with, because there's so many great people trying to make the laws better. We just have to work together. So I think my background working with creatives, really passionate people in my past, and working in a field that, when I started working in the arts, many people did not take it seriously and didn't see it as an important part of our economy, important part of our communities. And we've come a long way over the last 20, 25 years. And I got to be a part of that. 25 years ago, Norman was one of the only places doing public art, Norman and Tulsa. Now we have all our communities seeing that value, seeing the value of having creative people working, film and music. And I think, to me, watching something like that grow over time through hard work, collaboration, and advocacy, I know what we can accomplish when we work together. And of course, when I was in the arts, I wasn't anybody's boss, really. I was a little organization, so I was always trying to find partners. And that works well for me in the building because none of us are in charge of each other. We are almost like a family because the voters have made us a family. And so I'm not anybody's boss. We are critical thinkers, and we're trying to find that consensus when we can. And I think my background in nonprofits helped me be ready for that.
And it sounds a lot like, my degree work is in leadership, and
Nice.
Leader is a follower. And that's where it looks like what you're emulating as well. Hey, I'm going to pull up a couple of things here because again,
Great.
we are talking about you running for re-election, and I've got to pull up. I had to drop that other page so that I can pull up this next one.
Sure.
Folks, we've got to figure out how to get all of our current people in the legislature reelected. And one way to do that is to fund them financially. I mean, there's many ways we can do it. We can do it through volunteer. We can do phone banking. We can knock on doors. We can write postcards, write letters, emails. All of those things we can do. That's volunteering our time. But if we have the means available, we can also help by giving a financial contribution. A little bit of your treasure goes a long way. And if we can recur that on a regular basis, let's say as an example, I've got $5 listed up there, that if we can just give $5 every single month and we get 1,000 people doing that, that enormous amount of money can get a person reelected. And so I wanted to bring it up for people.
That's awesome. Yeah. Thanks for doing that. Just a quick story. I have a friend who, when I started running, she started giving me $15 a month. And just had made that decision. She was like, I don't have a lot of money, but I'm going to commit this. She has now been giving me $15 a month for, 8 years or whatever. This money adds up. And I can't tell you the relief. When you're a candidate, money doesn't just magically appear. You are calling, you are sending people letters, you're having events, you are asking people for money. And so to have a gift show up really makes a difference to me and to all candidates, because not only is it encouraging, but it's also resources that we're not having to spend time to find. And time is the biggest challenge for us, especially when you're an incumbent. And also when I was running to start with, of course, because I still have my job. But when you're an incumbent, you're trying to both serve the legislature, serve your people, and do the campaign stuff. And I'll just point out that we have almost no budget for district outreach. And I think people would be surprised to know we don't have enough money from state taxpayer money, and I can understand why we've kept those budgets small, but there's not money for me to do outreach to my district. And so for me to do that outreach, I use campaign funds. That's the way that I reach people. So some of it relates to elections, but some of it is just serving people well, because not everybody's online. Lots and lots of folks are older or have different technology. And so we use campaign monies to do things like send surveys, send updates, do direct messaging, and that helps us serve people well. Also, I'll just say.
Folks, the reason why I bring this up is in the last election, Senator Kirt did win the last election, but I want to call it comfortably. All it would take is really a 10-point swing. If there was 800 people who were Republicans who voted in that election, it could have impacted this election a lot differently. So, folks, we've got to keep our eye on the ball. We've got to be ready to continue to run forward and do our due diligence to keep our legislators, because just a minor slip up, taking something for granted, and we'll lose big. And we can't afford to lose somebody like Leader Kirt. She is absolutely one of the best people that I've dealt with at the Capitol, and I enjoy this time having this conversation. But folks, we've really got to stand up and toe the line to do our part, because she can't do it by herself. She's got to do it on the backs of all of us, giving financial contributions. What I've heard before is time, talent, and treasure. Those are the three things that all the candidates are asking us to do. So it's been a great conversation.
Kevin, I so appreciate you emphasizing that. I'll just if I can talk a little bit about time, because one of the things, like my last election, people said, "Oh, you're not going to have any problems." And I knew that the numbers were in my favor because, of course, things were redrawn and gerrymandered to be more Democratic so that other districts would be more Republican. But I'll tell you, my work in my district matters to all the other elections. And,
Right.
and so if I can bring my district out well, that helps everyone up the ballot and everyone down the ballot. And so you've got, let's say I'm overlapping with a candidate that doesn't have the same incumbency and that platform that I have where I've talked to people for years. I have the ability to help bring people out. And I want to do my part. Whether I have a short-term election or not, I want my district to vote well. I want them to be informed and engaged. And what I found is the parts of my district that had been represented by someone who is an engaged member. So, for instance, the part of my district when I first started that overlapped with Cindy Munson, those people felt more hope and more like they could communicate with their elected official. They knew someone was up there fighting for them, and that helped them be inspired to vote for me and to show up and think that their voice mattered. Whereas right across town, I had a part of my district that had been represented by Sally Kern for decades and decades. And if anyone's watched politics a long time, they'll know that she was an especially anti-LGBTQ legislator that really demoralized people because they didn't feel listened to. She wouldn't answer her constituents' messages. She didn't stay engaged, right? So when I would knock on those doors at the beginning, they did not trust that their voice mattered. They didn't trust that I could win. And so it's that work and that layered work of both the people in office already and the new candidates getting out and talking to people. I mean, I just think that you can't underestimate how much it matters for incumbents to reach their districts well for all of us to do better,
Well, I got to thank you again for coming on to Coffee with Democrats. Again, without people like you, this show would be nothing. And I appreciate you taking your extra step and extra effort to be with us. I know you're being that kind of soccer mom today, but you are such a wonderful leader. You're such a wonderful person. And I want to thank you so much for being on here. And folks, we're next week is 11/11. It's also Veterans Day, and we're hoping to have a legislator who is a veteran who will join us next week. We're not sure that's going to happen yet, but we have something in place. Starting, I just finished it today. The Cleveland County Democrats is going to allow a Coffee with Democrats to have a space in the actual Cleveland County Democrat office, and we have a studio now set up for Coffee with Democrats in the Cleveland County Democrats, so we can do these events.
Cool.
Both
That's great.
Remote. We want to keep this option available so that people like yourself who are extremely busy, you don't have to travel to Norman in order to be there. But if you have the opportunity to be down here, we want to give that opportunity and do these live events down here.
That's incredible.
All right. Well, thank you, folks. And until next Tuesday, again, thank you, Leader Kirt. We really appreciate you being on here. And folks, until next Tuesday, 7 p.m., we're going to be back on here again. Until then, please be safe. This segment of Coffee with Democrats is brought to you by Steve Holcomb, Attorney at Law. With family ties to Oklahoma and the legal field that goes back as far as the early 1900s, Steve Holcomb is a well-known and respected attorney at law in Pawhuska, Oklahoma. You can trust Steve Holcomb, Attorney at Law, with your legal needs.